What are the Pacers learning from their up and down play of late, and how can it help them emerge from this rocky stretch? Plus, more talk on Tyrese Haliburton slump, the Pacers' emerging defense, and their upcoming road trip, all on today's Locked On Pacers podcast.
You are Locked On Pacers, your daily Indiana Pacers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What up, y'all? Happy Wednesday, and welcome into another edition of the Locked On Pacers podcast, where we, of course, talk about the Indiana Pacers. As always, my name's Tony East. I cover the team for Forbes and SI, and today, lots to get to about the Pacers and their rocky play of late, which is strange because their last three losses are at home by a combined 9 points, and yet they does not 10 points, but it doesn't feel that way, given the struggles of some key players, most namely Tyrese Haliburton, and the general state of the team. Jonathan Smith from CBS The Ticket's 1430 and the Jonathan Smith Show, and I talk about it all. The Pacers' recent tonal shift. No more learning. It's time to win. We talk a little more about Haliburton's struggles, the team's emerging defense, and plenty more in a wide-ranging conversation as the Pacers embark on a key road trip. Lots coming with Jonathan Smith on today's Locked On Pacers. Let's just get right to it.
A new guest here. It's Jonathan Smith from the Jonathan Smith Show and producing, writing, and on-air talent at CBS 1430 The Ticket. We've got a lot to talk about, Jonathan, because the Pacers keep losing these close games at home. They can't make threes. They have chances to climb the standings, and they just have not been able to get over the hump in a meaningful way. 1-3 in their last home games, survived by a nice road stretch, beating the Thunder and the Magic on the road. But we got a new moment a new kind of tonal shift, I would say, from the Pacers today. They had practice. Rick Carlisle did his normal, usual morning radio hit on 107.5 The Fan with Kevin Bowen and Andy Sweeney. And Rick Carlisle said, "I'm tired of talking about how we've got to learn from this. That's got to be a tired narrative from anyone on our team or on our coaching staff. We've been through a lot this year. It's time for us to have learned these lessons about being able to maintain intensity, focus, attention to detail, the importance of defense, all that kind of stuff." That's what it is. Alex Golden, kind enough to tweet out that full quote. So, Jonathan, first of all, how are you? I just talked for a long time without asking that. And second of all, why are the Pacers running out of time? What has been where is the turning point to you of no more learning moments? Let's go.
I'm doing pretty well. I just got home after doing 4 hours of radio, so I'm pretty great. I don't want to oversimplify these things, but Rick Carlisle talking about intensity and all those different types of things, which are important, yes, but is this really not just more of a matter of Tyrese Haliburton hadn't been shooting the ball very well?
That is a big part of it.
Is that not the answer to all of it? It's like they lost by 5 last night, right? 108-103 against Cleveland. Like, you hold the Cavs to 108 points. Like, if your superstar just shoots the ball halfway decently, they probably pull that one out. But as a whole, I mean, I like there's definitely some other look. It's Coach Carlisle. Like, he's not going to say anything dumb. Like, there's definitely some truth in what he's saying about a lack of intensity and things, but I think a lot of intensity and effort, a lot of that is shown on the defensive side of the ball, which I think has been better since the All-Star break.
Yes.
So I don't know if I buy the whole intensity thing. Part of me thinks maybe that's just coach talk and he doesn't want to talk about what's really going on.
Here's what I think. Since the All-Star break, they have, I believe, 6 losses. I want to make sure I don't say anything stupid. Yes, they have 6 losses since the All-Star break. 4 of them, Toronto right after the break, Cavs very recently, Timberwolves, and Bulls. They were within 1 possession in the last 5 minutes and lost, right? The Raptors game, they were winning in the fourth quarter. They were down 4 in the last, I don't remember the closest they got at the end. So maybe that's not technically 1 possession. I'll figure out the exact thing as I keep talking. They were down 4 with 3 minutes to go in that game. They were tied with Cleveland 2 nights ago. They were tied with Minnesota, and they were beating the Bulls all in the last minutes of these games, and they lost all of them, right? So that is something beyond Tyrese Haliburton that's been a problem for them. 4 of their 6 losses since the break are just like tear your heart out kind of losses that sit worse with everybody, right? If you get blown out, it hurts as a player, but like you move on faster. You're just like, dang, we got our butt kicked. Let's go to the next one. If you lose a close one, you think about like every little play that went wrong, because if that one play was flipped, you might have won. So that, I think, is part of this recent tonal shift. 2 is what you said. Like, I was going through a list of players to try to talk with you about today, because I was like, who's been interesting to me besides Tyrese Haliburton? I've talked about him like 4 or 5 podcasts in a row for at least part of the time. It all comes back to him, right? Like, everybody else to me is reaching or exceeding expectations since the All-Star break, except for him, right? So
you're exactly right.
Him. And then the third part of it being about learning is they're out of time. I think that is what he's saying basically. Like, early in the season, and even last year when they were in development mode at this time of the season, which is something you talked about at practice today, like if they lost a game like this, they would have a film session and talk about what went wrong in the clutch. And they had the second quarter stretch against Cleveland where the zone defense killed them at times, and all this stuff, and that really matters, and they can learn from it and get better. And even throughout this season, they've talked like that. Now, though, they fell to 7th last night. Like, they can't afford to have games where they say, oh, well, live and learn, we'll get them next time. They have 13 games left, and they're in 7th, right? They need to be – it's not – I mean, learning is good, but it's about applying those lessons now.
Yeah.
And so that's why I think right now the tonal shift has happened, because 4 of their 6 losses since the break have all been so close, razor-thin home margins, where you think about one play way more. And so even if there is progress, their defense has been getting better, like you said, it doesn't feel like it as much when the losses have kind of a similar script. That's where I think this is coming from. And I think that's tough for the Pacers. They've got to find a way to win a close game, and they've got to find a way to bank some wins. They've got a tough road trip coming up because the standings say, hey, it's time. Let's go.
Yeah, I agree with you a lot. I will say, so I like to be as positive as possible, but believe it or not. And going back to the Bulls loss. I remember after that Bulls loss, I was so upset because it felt like Siakam and Haliburton didn't take any shots down the stretch.
Yes.
And
Agreed.
Whereas last night, kind of from what I've gathered, or 2 nights ago, I keep saying last night, whenever they played the Cavs, whenever that happened.
For us,
Haliburton
last night, for people listening, 2 nights ago, you're on it. You're on it.
Okay. Haliburton appeared to have been really aggressive. Like, he took a lot of shots, which I appreciate, even though he's slumping. It kind of sucks. But I think heading into the playoffs, I think that's much more – that's where I would rather the Pacers offense be. Like, the first 44 minutes of the game, let the ball pop around, do all that fun stuff that makes the Pacers the Pacers. But I will say the one thing that I liked about the Cleveland game, even though they lost, even though that's a game that they needed to win, I like how aggressive Haliburton was down the stretch.
The right 2 guys. Yeah. Yes.
So, but yeah, I mean, this tonal shift, like you're exactly right. Like, they have to learn from these losses because, I've been toying around with this idea to do on my show of could the Pacers be like the Hawks and the Mavericks of 3 and 4 years ago, where it's this young team with this young superstar making this unprecedented run. And if you can't close teams out, then they can't be that team to make that surprising leap.
That is true. Those teams also, like the Pacers, had really good offenses led from that star guard. But there's also the fear of they played the Cavs last night, so it's easy to think about this, right? Like, the Cavs were the 8th seed in the play-in a couple years ago, and they didn't make it. And the Warriors were the 8th seed in the play-in tournament a couple years ago, and they didn't make it, right? Like, on one hand, yes, they have at their best shown the capability to do those kind of things. But on the other hand, we've seen in the past, like, even if you're good and you have those high capabilities, doesn't mean anything. You can so easily have the floor fall out. Last year, the 8-seeded Clippers did not get out of the play-in tournament, right? It just is a thing that happens. And so I think you're right. The process of last night's game late, like, even a slumping Haliburton should be among the top options in crunch time, and Siakam as well. That made sense. They did the right thing, but the margins are so thin that when it doesn't work out, and Haliburton didn't get a call on the late 3, and then Siakam got pushed out of bounds by Niang, and like all of a sudden, there goes your margin, right? Your 2 star players had 2 possessions that crumbled beneath their feet, and you lose. So this is a good time to transition to Haliburton, I suppose. I wanted to close with this because I just feel like I've talked about him ad nauseum. It's just the reality right now.
Go ahead. But before we move on, I just want to hit on, you talk about these 7 and 8 seeds not making it out of the play-in tournament, it's a great thing to be cautious about, especially after watching DeMar DeRozan go for dang near 50 the other night in Cambridge.
Yeah.
Trust me, I believe they're tied with Miami record-wise, but they don't have the tiebreaker. So, and I think they play one more time this year.
Yes, they do play. That is their most important game of the season. April 7th, Miami in Indianapolis. Biggest game of the season for the Pacers.
Yeah, so, I mean, there's still a little bit of hope, but they got to, you're right. They've got to find a way to execute down the stretch. They can give the ball to Haliburton and Siakam all they want to. But if they don't execute, who cares,
Right. Yeah, that's certainly true.
Hey guys, short little break so we can talk. But the lovely folks over at eBay Motors, passion, drive, and patience, what brings home the winning trophy is also what helps you keep your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance, from superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered with over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die. You will always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay's guaranteed fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time, or you'll get your money back, because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay guaranteed fit, only available to U.S. customers.
So we talked with Haliburton more today or yesterday for people listening at practice about this slump, right? And there's only so much he can say, right? It's not like we're getting new information. He's just explaining his psyche a little bit more every time. I wanted to ask him about, last time he slumped, for lack of a better term, was late December. He was getting blitzed a lot. It was a big discussion of how can the Pacers help him get through this, what's actually going on. And then he figured it out and played great and had good stats, and they started winning a bunch before he got hurt. And this time it's not like something the defenses are doing to him. And so that is what he described to me as this last time it was him versus scheme, or him versus an opponent. This time it's him versus himself, right? And he's heard everything, right? That I've said, that other people have written about, it doesn't look like he's having fun, and he's trying to have fun. Okay, that's great. It's not fun for him when he's missing a lot of shots and not winning, right? You can't just force yourself to do that. And so he, like me, believes it's a law of averages thing, and that eventually he'll explode out of this. And, you got to take your lumps as a player. Maybe that's true, but the longer it goes on at a pivotal time, the worse it gets for the Pacers in a way that's extremely meaningful. There's not much to add that hasn't already been said. Beyond that, it's just could not be coming at a worse time for the Pacers, who the Heat aren't playing well right now, right? They could have separated themselves more from Miami, especially as Orlando and New York just keep winning. And he's really struggling. And I don't know, everything else continues to be good, making 60% of his twos, good passing. They typically do well when he's on the floor. Teams still are game planning for him like crazy. Karis LeVert was on him, and the screener would flash out to him every time he'd come under screen last night, so someone else was open. All that stuff is still happening. He just can't make anything. And it's really, really painful for this team. And the more he talks about it, the more you understand how hard it can be to work through something like that. Even if, he knows it, it's not like he can just be like, it's over, I feel great again. That's not how it works. And I don't know how else to get out of it for him, though. He's just got to.
Yeah, it's one of those things where he just has to keep shooting the ball. As painful as it is,
he absolutely does.
He's got to keep shooting. And what I think really sucks about this, it's not even just the timing of it's late in the season, but we've seen more and more of this McConnell and Haliburton on the floor together at the same time thing, where he's supposed to fill this being a shooter role, playing off the ball a little bit more. And so when he can't fill that role as well as he can, it's a little frustrating. But look, just like you said, it's a law of averages. Okay, he shot 40% from three every year that he's been in the league. I think he's down to 37% on this year, though, just because of this long slump. But here's what's happen now. You said what?
36 now.
Yeah, jeez. That's that's lower than Mathurin's this year. That's not great. So, but here's what's gonna happen though. We're gonna wake up on April 7th, and we're gonna be like when is Haliburton going to break out of this? And then he's gonna go 7 for 7 against Miami, and it's gonna be great. We're gonna be fun.
He did say that. It's funny you say that, because he kind of said, like, it's part of your journey and story as a player to like go through something like this. And he's like, maybe it'll all be great. And in my head, when he said that, I like, maybe it's just the story guy in me. I thought, oh, they're going to be like a game behind the Heat. And then he's going to go 7 for 10 from 3 that game and hit like a 40-footer to win it. And then they'll be the 6th seed. And that would be very poetic for him. The other thing I thought was, well, the last time he shot 40% from 3 in a single game, by the way, not like for a stretch, in one game, which is crazy to say. We are approaching a month. It was February 22nd, the first game out of the All-Star break against the Pistons. He has 2 chances to avoid going a full month without a game at 40% from 3. But how fitting would it be to bookend it with Pistons games to perhaps break out of the slump? And man, would it be good for the Pacers if on this road trip with 3 like good, not great, California teams and 2 division opponents, for him to explode out of it. Like, they got to hold off the Bulls, who are playing pretty well. So there's not a lot to add. It's kind of lame to say. It's just they aren't the same team when this is who he is. Duh. But they've made lots of defensive progress. McConnell's been great. They're figuring out Siakam. Like, a lot of stuff is falling into place. And they have 4 losses by a possession or 2 where if he was just even closer to normal, they'd be riding high since the All-Star break. He's got to get out of it for this team to be what they want to be. Otherwise, this is going to be their reality, trying to fight as hard as they can to get out of 7-8. And I have nothing to add unless you do.
So I haven't looked into the numbers on this, but they talk a lot about shooters to break out of a slump. It's great for them to get to the free throw line. Like, has he been doing that more? I know you said that his shots inside the arc have been, still very, very normal for him.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of curious if he got to the free throw line a little bit more, if that would expedite the process of him breaking out of this slump.
I have heard that before. So on one hand, he's shooting 91% from the foul line since the All-Star break. Another stat among all of them that says this is the same kind of guy, right?
Yeah.
Since the break, 10 assists, 16 points, making 60% of his shoots, 90% of his foul shots. But you're right, the difference is the attempts. 2.5 per game in that stretch since the break. I think he only has 4 games above 3 free throw attempts since the All-Star break. And 2.5 attempts is extremely low, not just for him, but for a star player in general. On the season, he's at 3.4. Pre-All-Star, I'll run really quick. But like, stars in general, his shot profile does not suggest he should get to the line a lot, but it more than this. So pre-All-Star break, he was at 3.6 free throw attempts per game. So that's already one lower. And and pre-All-Star break includes that stretch of, when he was playing 20 minutes a game and had no burst, right? So even that is interesting. Like, 2.5 free throw attempts per game would rank about 90th in the NBA. Like that. Stars are top 50, get to the line kind of guys. And so he's making them, but he's not getting there enough. And so I think you're right that it's easier said than done given his shot diet, but that could be something that helps him for sure.
Yeah, and there's one more thing that I want to add. We talk a lot about like what this slump means from like a Pacer standpoint, a playoff standpoint. What about for him? Like, could this potentially cost him an All-NBA bid, which would then cost him $40 million? I was
trying to think about how to bring this up, and you just made it easy for me at some point on this podcast. Keep going. Sorry.
That's just my question of, like, could he cost himself $40 million because he had a month and a half where he just didn't shoot it very well from 3? Because that would suck. Because he's been one of the better point guards and definitely one of the. So with the way that, the All-Star voting works now, it's basically just, the 15 best players that play over the 65 game limit, which I think he's been this year. And it was just, man, it'd suck if he lost out on $40 million because of a month and a half of bad shooting.
So this is actually very ironic. I was talking to somebody else about this. So first of all, like pre-injury, he'd have made first team All-NBA. Like he probably would have been in that top 5, 6, 7 guys discussion. And obviously not even close to the same player sense. So funnily enough, the 65 game rule is the reason that he had a lot of those wobbly 20-minute games with like no stats. And now he's not playing as well. But if he gets to 65 games, because like Embiid's out, Jamal Murray's out, Donovan Mitchell's out, Booker's probably going to be out. I'm missing several guys who are not going to.
Yeah, there's a lot of guys who aren't going to qualify.
Ironically, the rule that made it awkward for his season could be the one that actually gets him All-NBA because a lot of other guys can't make it. And so even if he finishes like naturally as the 19th best player this season in total. Well, there's so many guys in front of him that can't make it that he will. Yeah. So it's very ironic that for a while we were talking about this rule of something preventing him from getting it, but now through this slump, it actually might be the thing that gets him onto the AllNBA teams, which would be great.
Yeah, I guess that's true because like I'm trying to think through guys right now. Obviously, Embiid's one. Doesn't look like Donovan Mitchell is going to hit the limit.
He just actually missed it. Mitchell did. Hang on.
Okay. Mitchell, Booker, Beal, are Kawhi and Paul George gonna? Because they've both been awesome. I don't know how many games they've played.
Okay,
but there are a lot of guys who, like you said, like they aren't going to qualify for it, and that may be his saving grace, which would actually be like you said.
Booker, then he's close. Okay, Jamal Murray out, Mitchell's out, Jimmy Butler's out, Julius Randle's out, Kyrie is out, Darius Garland is out, Bradley Beal's out, and Embiid is out. Like that's a lot of guys who could have been right on that line, and then Booker and Haliburton. So the number you can miss is 17. They're both 4 away. Trae Young is going to miss it. So that actually, assuming he gets to it, and he actually has to get to 64 regular season games because the in-season tournament finals, he's got a shot, right? Very, very good shot, right? Given the total of his full season. But yes, his current level is not All-NBA level. I don't even think he would do that. But I think that, funnily enough, the rule that at one point was harming him is now in his favor. So I wanted to bring that up somehow, but there was no natural way to just include that. But thank you.
Yeah, you got it.
One more break here, guys. We got to talk about the lovely folks over at Nissan. Are you the kind of driver that loves to push things a little further? Ever wonder what adventure could be around the next corner? Well, our friends at Nissan have a lineup of SUVs with the capabilities to take your adventure to the next level, like the 2024 Nissan Rogue. It's perfect for city drives or great escapes. It's got class-exclusive Google built-in, and it's your always updating assistant to call on for almost anything. Gone are the days of connecting your phone. Google Assistant, Google Maps, Google Play Store, built right in to the 12.3-inch HD touchscreen infotainment system, and the 2024 Rogue is the perfect mid-size crossover for your next adventure. They also have the Nissan Pathfinder with room for up to 4, has room for up to 8, and expansive cargo capacity, and advanced 4x4 capability with 284 horsepower, up to 6,000 pounds of towing. When adventure calls, the Pathfinder is there to answer, and 2024 Nissan Armada is there to be the rugged 4x4 for you. Take the Nissan Rogue, Nissan Pathfinder, or Nissan Armada and go find your next big adventure. Shop now at nissanusa.com.
Okay. There is one positive that keeps coming up for the Pacers of late. They're defending pretty dang well, which has been the only reason they're not having an awful stretch. They held the Nets to 100. They defended well in OKC. They defended very well in Orlando, right? That has saved them since the break. Rick Carlisle brought it up today. Haliburton brought it up today at practice. The last 6 games for the Pacers. They are 6th in the NBA in defensive rating. That is dating back to their loss to Minnesota. They beat Dallas the game before that, but they didn't defend particularly awesome in that game. That's sensational for them, though. If you even just go post All-Star break, which is, they're not amazing in this stretch, but they're 17th in defensive rating. They're 7-6 in that stretch, and their net rating behind that defense, even though their offense isn't awesome, 116.8 is the 8th best offense, but their net rating is 8th. Like, this is why their close games stand out to me so much, because by net rating, they've been a top 10 team since the All-Star break. But they're not. Yeah. But the reason that's possible, that weird reality I just said, where the 7-6 team that keeps having these uneven results has a really good net rating, is because their defense has been really good recently. What has stood out to you about what they're doing there? Is this sustainable? Can they keep relying on this? Is it going to travel on this road trip? What do you think, Jonathan, about the defense?
It's pretty amazing what can happen defensively when you get rid of a guy like Buddy Hield.
That has helped. Yes.
If you listen to my show at all, I was not a Buddy Hield fan. But here's the thing, I think in some ways maybe the Mathurin injury helps a little bit because it's more minutes for McCollum, because he's an outstanding defender. Aaron Nesmith coming back from injury as well. I think that's helped a lot. And here's the thing that kind of bothers me a little bit. Myles Turner is one of the better rim protectors in the entire league. He doesn't get talked about like he is, but his presence, I think, has helped. He's been as bad as Haliburton's been. Myles Turner's been awesome.
Both ends,
post All-Star break.
Yeah, very
good. On both ends of the floor. And so, his impact, I think, has been big. the boosted minutes for McCollum and Nesmith, and Ben Shepherd as well. He's defended way better than I think you would expect really any rookie to defend. So I think the increased minutes for all those guys has really helped feed this solid average defense for the Pacers.
Yeah, I agree. So Turner's a big part of this. Funnily enough, like Turner had those games, Dallas, he's awesome against Dallas all the time.
He was so good.
We had all these blocks, but ironically, like their very, very, very best defensive games, he does not block that many shots because he doesn't have to. There's not chances to do it because guys are prevented from driving entirely, or the rotations and communications are so crisp, but there's not like, Myles Turner needs to come from the weak side and block the shot, or like, hopefully he can drop back and get back in time. And he has been really good at those things. Like even in Orlando, even on possessions where he wasn't blocking a bunch of shots, like he was scaring the Magic away from coming to the rim, right? That was such an impressive defensive game from him. And so, yeah, I think he's been phenomenal since the All-Star break, especially late. I think he got nominated for Conference Player of the Week last week for his both.
He was so good.
17 and 7 since the break, 38% from three, and this defense we're talking about. But like I said, yes, he's phenomenal. But again, their best defensive games, they don't need him that much. So to me, and the thing they've talked about is you can just kind of see it. And this, I get why this goes away at times throughout a season. They're communicating well, and that you can tell when their rotations don't suck. And their rotations don't suck, you can tell when it's just not a layup line for their team. When they're keeping guys out of the paint, that's because they're communicating in a way that makes their rotation timely, right? Boom. The second a guy gets beat or is a little wobbly or they double team and they need to get out of it, the right guy goes to this guy and then they X out and then the rotation comes on the weak side and like everybody's accounted for and there's not an easy shot for the other team and they have to reset and get to something harder. And, like bad communication last night, late, when they doubled, I think it was LeVert, and LeVert gave it up to Niang, and then Niang took a dribble, and then Isaac Okoro cut into the basket, and they lost Okoro on the cut, right? That's bad communication, but that wasn't happening all night. They only gave up 108. Like, they should have. That should be enough for them to win, right? So that has been the standout thing to me is, like, you dig through the opponent drive numbers, you dig through points in the paint numbers, that's where it's sitting at is they're preventing that much better than they were earlier this season. Now, they had a stretch like this before, where they were defending pretty well, and that kind of faded away. But it kind of faded away around the time they made the Siakam trade and really changed their team. I'm curious now with Siakam in the fold, if they can hold this level for long enough. People say defense travels. They have 5 pretty important road games coming up. If they can hold this defensive level on this road trip, or just long enough for Haliburton to start playing like an all-star again, that would be so huge. They've been so wild. Like, it's hard for me to trust them defensively, even though I think what they're doing looks good and can be sustained. Like Mathurin and Hield not playing is a part of that. Certainly, if they can hold it until Haliburton gets back to playing like Tyrese Haliburton, that could be the thing that saves them from falling out of the seed they want to be, because they actually have been defending very well of late.
It really could. And I wanted to ask you, how big of a role do you think Siakam has played in this defense? Just him actually like not having to play Nesmith at the 4 and him like having a legitimate power forward, because he's been a pretty good defender throughout his career as well.
He has. I actually have. So for the first like month and a half he was here, let's say up to like March 1st, I actually was not impressed by his defense in ways that I thought I would be. Now, he still had a net helpful effect because of what you just said, like Nesmith's guarding 3s, Nembhard's guarding 2s. Like, that is good for the Pacers in that way. But sometimes Siakam would be on 5s, or sometimes he'd get destroyed by screens, or, just like not crisp. I think that recently that he, like, I can't say like a specific game where it obviously stood out to me. I thought he defended it Brandon Ingram well the first time. the
first time I was at that game, he did defend really well.
So like, I guess March 1st is a good cutoff where I think he's been executing his part of the scheme pretty well, and now I think he's like getting into the team principles even better. Like Rick Carlisle said, the Nets game he thought was Siakam's best defensive game with the Pacers this season, right? So I think that's even a thing the Pacers are seeing too. So yeah, I think that maybe that's part of it too, even beyond communication, is this star player they just got is reaching a new level defensively, and that has a ripple effect on every other starter or every other guy he's playing with. Yeah,
I would agree. I was just because I think I've fallen into a pretty similar bowl as you in terms of like the first little bit he was here. It's like I feel like he was a better defender than this when he was in Toronto. But over, the past, this month, I guess, like it definitely feels like it's gone up a level. Especially that game against Brandon Ingram. I was at that game and he was awesome. So,
yeah. So I think it's important they keep it up, and I really think it's important on this road trip. This is I've talked about key stretches of their schedule throughout the season when they've come. One was mid-November. They did terribly. One was late December. They did awesome, and then how that has meant a lot for their season. This is, to me, the last one, the 5 games they have coming up, because starting March 29th, they have 3 more road games, and it's Toronto, Brooklyn, and Cleveland that could have clinched their seed. And then they have the rest of their games are home games, a lot of them against not awesome teams. If they can be in a good position entering that March 29 stretch, that would be huge for them. The Sixers continue to not play very well without Joel Embiid. They're, I think, 10-21. Maybe, no, they just won last night. 11-21 without him. And the Heat, meanwhile, who have a kind of easy schedule the rest of the way, their next couple games is Cleveland, who's trying to climb the standings, New Orleans, who's playing very well, Cleveland again, the Warriors, who are trying to climb the standings before this. The Heat have then some easy games before they play the Pacers, and the Heat aren't playing particularly well. If the Pacers can do well enough on this road trip, that would, to me, would put them in the driver's seat for 6 versus needing help from others. It's vital to me, and there's not a lot you can say about the Pacers' quality of opponent anymore. They lose to teams they should lose to all the time, but if they can get
teams that they shouldn't all the time.
Yeah, that's true. That is true. If they can, I will not predict their seed. I can't predict their wins and losses. It's impossible. I will say this. If they win 3 games on this road trip, I think they would become the favorites for the 6th seed. If they have a wobbly trip or look whimsy in California, I think the Heat would be the team that everybody would favor to get the 6th spot. And I know they play each other in what could be the biggest game of the season for both teams, but that's how important I think this road trip is it could determine playoffs or not.
I agree. And like 3 games doesn't seem like out of the question. Like they should beat Detroit. I could see a world where they beat the Lakers.
Detroit's playing better.
You still what?
Detroit's playing better. Pacers have not earned the right to say they should beat anybody. It's a scary game for them. It really is.
It is, but I don't know. The Clippers have not been playing well as of late. The Lakers are kind of up and down. The Warriors are the Warriors. Like I don't think it's out of the question that they could win 3 games here.
They won it. They beat the Lakers in LA last year. They beat the Warriors in Golden State last year, right? Like I know they can do this, but they really need. I mean, like I would say on paper they're favorites against the Bulls and Pistons. Although they've lost to the Bulls twice this season, but so winning 1 California game would go a long way. Winning 2 would be huge. Of course, winning as many games is the best possible thing.
The great if they just went 5-0, right?
That's right. Yeah. Why are we talking about 3 wins? Go for 5. So we'll see. We'll cover it all here on the Locked On Pacers podcast and on the Jonathan Smith Show and many other places over on CBS The Ticket 1430, where I'll be tomorrow at 11:20 with Jonathan every week on Wednesdays. Jonathan, thank you for the time. Where can people find you and your work writing, talking, producing things about Indiana sports?
Yeah, so as you said, the radio station, 1430 a.m., there's also an app, the Indy Sports Ticket app. You can go to indysportsticket.com. You can find different articles and things that I've written there, and you can follow me on Twitter at _ Jonathan Smith.
The double underscore, baby. I used to have that in mine, and I hated it so much that
I hate it too, man. But Jonathan Smith's a really popular name.
I was going to say, you have the hardest name for it. The same guy has Tony East and Tony _East, but one of them he lost the password to. I was like, you jerk. Screw you. Now I have to use my middle initial. It is what it is. Tomorrow, I'll be in Detroit, so we'll be talking Pistons from a hotel room up there. And then it's our only time to fit in standings watch for the week. So that will be tomorrow night. Spoiler alert, Knicks and Magic. Lots of wins. Pacers not happy about that. We'll cover all that and plenty more as the week progresses and the road trip continues. Give Jonathan a follow. Check out his work. Thank you all for listening. Have a wonderful day. We'll see you soon.